All right, so our next topic is solving systems of equations. Okay, so systems of equations just means that there are two equations. Everything we did first semester, we only dealt with one equation at a time. Now we're going to have two equations on one graph. And so it's when you have two equations or functions that have one point or solution in common. So you solve the system by finding the point that they both have. It's where they cross. That's where the solution is where the lines cross. Okay, so if I have this graph right here, obviously I can see the lines touch. I can see exactly where they cross right there. And so we will say that that graph, that system has one solution. Okay, that is what one solution. The lines cross and that's it. They cross one time. That is the solution. In the second graph, I see that these lines run side by side and they never cross each other. So then that's going to be no solution. If the lines never touch, then that means there's nowhere that they cross. So that's no solution. And then finally over here, if I just see one line, this tells me that there's actually two lines on this graph, but the second line is right on top of the first line. They are the exact same line twice. So there's one line and then right on top of it is another line. So how many times do those lines cross? They cross everywhere on that line all the time. So that means that's going to be infinite solution. Okay? So you need to know what those looks like. Those are easy questions on the STAR test. They're going to ask you like, oh, which graph has no solution? So you're looking for which one never is going to touch, and that's no solution. Okay? So on these particular ones, we're looking, what is the solution shown in the graph? So the solution, that means I'm going to be writing in parentheses something x comma y. And how do I know where the solution is? Well, it's wherever these lines cross. So I'm going to circle up. That's where the lines touch. What are the coordinates? So I know I write the x number first. So that means this point is at positive 1, positive 3. So my solution is 1 comma 3. And that's the answer. Okay. In this graph over here, I see that the lines do touch. Where do they touch? Up here. And I'm going to write my answer in parentheses. So what's the x number? Says 4, comma, what's the y number? Also 4. And so the solution is 4, comma 4. Pretty easy. So they're not always going to make it that easy where they just give you the graph. Okay? They're going to give you two equations and you're supposed to figure out what the solution is. So we're going to use that fancy Desmos calculator that we just learned about on Tuesday to help us figure it out. So the first thing for any of these is you need to make sure your equation is in y equals mx plus b. That means it has to be solved for y. Okay? If it's not, then you have to solve it for y before you type it in. So we're going to type our equations in. Now, if I look at number 1, both of them are already solved for y. So I don't have to worry about doing that step. I can just type these in right away. So I'm going to pull up my Desmos calculator right here, and I'm going to type both of them in at the same time. So it was y equals negative 1 over 5, negative 1 slash 5, x minus 9. Where's my graph? Oh, okay. We're noticing I looked and I was like, oh, there's no graph there. You got to move the graph around and you will be able to find it. So there's the first graph. Second graph says y equals 12 over 5x. And then plus 4. Okay. So there's my two lines. I see that these lines touch. That's good. That means that there is a solution. Okay, so I'm hovering my mouse over where the lines cross, and Desmos is even nice, and they put a dot on it for you. And see how I just moved my mouse over it? I didn't have to click on it, and it tells me the coordinates right there. It says it right there, negative 5 comma negative 8, and that's what I'm going to write as my answer. So parentheses, negative 5 comma negative 8, and that's my answer. Easy times. Okay, let's try another one over here. So here's our equations. They are already solved for y. So we're going to go ahead and type them in. So I'm going to delete. And here we go. The first one was negative 1 over 3x minus 8. And yes, you can just, if you click and drag the graph, it will move wherever you need to see the graph. And then the other equation was negative 1 over 3x plus 6. Oops. X plus 6. Now, I don't see the other graph. Where is it? Well, if I zoom in, you can use these buttons to zoom in and out, or you can use you guys have touch screens. If you pinch or like open, you can see the graphs, but there's the other one. So I'm going to zoom out so I can see them better. And I see that these lines are running side by side. Are these lines ever going to touch? Well, I could keep zooming out. Like if you look at these numbers, these are huge numbers. Does it look like these lines, they're not touching anywhere there? Does it look like they're ever going to touch? No. So that's going to be a no solution. And that's what you write. You don't put parentheses, you just write the words no solution. Okay? And that's the answer for that one. Because they never touch, so I can't say there is no answer. Okay? The next one, oh boy. Now on this one, neither of the equations are solved for y. So I have to do that first. So I'm going to write the first equation, I'm going to write over here. Okay, and you have to solve for y. And I'm going to write the other one over here. 3x minus 10y equals negative 30. Okay, and then you just have to solve these equations for y. And hopefully we did not forget how to do that over the break, but so we're trying to get y alone, so I'm going to move x first. Right now this is positive 4, so I'm going to minus 4x to move it to the other side. We're doing the opposite to solve the equation. 4x cancels, 5y is here. This is a regular number, this has an x, so I don't like actually type that in the calculator. I do it side by side, negative 4x plus 70, and then divided by 5. Divided by 5. Divided by 5. The 5's cancel. These things, I gotta type these in Desmos. So I don't have to pull up the other Desmos to type it in. I can still do it in the star Desmos. So here we go. I can X these out. So I'm doing negative 4 divided by 5. It says it's negative 0.0 or negative 0.8. We know we want to keep that as a fraction. So how do I make this into a fraction? Well, your little fraction button's over there now. And it will show you, oh, that does not simplify. So I'm going to leave that. That stays the same, negative 4 over 5 x. The positive 70 divided by 5, 70 divided by 5 is 14. So I'm putting plus 14. Now that's solved for y. So this equation is ready to go. I can type that in. But this other equation, not solved for y. So I have to solve that for y as well. So I'm moving the 3 opposite. Doing the opposite, so I'm minusing 3 minus 3 by 3x. Now don't forget that negative sign and the 10y. Whoops, I almost just put a positive. There we go, negative 10y equals, this does not have an x, this does have an x. We write them separate. Minus 30. And then divided by negative 10. Divided by negative 10. Divided by negative 10. So I'm going to type this in, negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 10. I get a decimal, so I push the button to make it a fraction. It's positive 3 over 10 now. Okay, that's good. 10's went away. 3 over 10. I had the x, I put the x with it. And now I'm doing negative 30. Negative 30 divided by negative 10. I get positive 3. We're noticing, like, last semester when we were solving for y, we were basically just doing it to practice for this exact moment. Like, the signs matter. So make sure if there are 2 negatives that you type both of them in when you type it in the calculator. Now this one's ready to go. It's solved for y. I can plug them in. So, where's my calculator? Here we go. So I'm doing y equals 4 over 5 x. Was it a negative? It was a negative. 4 over 5x plus 14. And then the other one was y equals 3 over 10. Ooh, that's 11. 10x plus 3 minus 3. I don't know. Let's look. Double check. Plus 3. Okay. So I'm looking for where they cross. Now this is like super zoomed out, so I can zoom back into like regular numbers. And there's where they cross. Now, oh, this time it didn't hover. Well, let's click on the graph. If you click on the graph, the dot will pop up again. And it shows me the answer is 10 comma 6. So that's what I'm going to write as my answer in orange. Parentheses 10 comma 6. Okay? If you guys have any questions, make sure you send them in the chat. Otherwise, you can go ahead and get started.